This is what you're worth now. $1. Natalia Voss pressed the worn bill into the trembling hand of the man standing before her. The same man who 5 years ago had thrown that exact dollar at her and predicted she'd die poor and forgotten. Now here he was, in her office, begging for $50 million. Before we get into this story, if you're part of the Mr. Cael Stories family, welcome back. If you're new here, you're in for something special. Hit that like button if you believe karma is real, and drop a comment telling me, have you ever had someone from your past come back needing something from you? I want to hear your stories. Now let me take you back to where this all started. 5 years earlier, champagne tasted like ashes in Natalia's mouth. She stood in the corner of the Grand Meridian Ballroom, watching her husband accept his third award that year, this one for visionary leadership in luxury hospitality. The crystal trophy caught the chandelier's glow as Damien Ashford raised it high, and 400 guests erupted in applause. Natalia knew every detail of the resort expansion that earned him this moment. She'd negotiated with architects at 3 a.m. She'd found the supplier in Bali who provided those rare, sustainable materials everyone was raving about. She'd convinced the skeptical investment board to take a chance on the radical design concept. But according to the program in her hand, the genius was him. Only him. Another win for your incredible husband, cooed Margaret Hightower, wife of a board member. You must be bursting with pride. Natalia smiled. She'd perfected this smile over 8 years of marriage. Warm on the surface, empty underneath. Of course. Across the ballroom, Damien descended from the stage. A young woman in a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent immediately latched onto his arm. Sienna Marquis, 24. Social media influencer. His brand consultant for the past 6 months. Natalia had designed the signature aesthetic Sienna now promoted across Instagram. Funny how that worked. Natalia, his voice. She turned. Damien stood before her, Sienna still clinging to him like expensive perfume. He'd been Danny Perkins once, a dreamer from a Phoenix trailer park with a third-hand suit and business plans scribbled on napkins. Natalia had loved Danny. She'd believed in him when he had nothing but ambition and charm. Congratulations, she said quietly. The expansion is beautiful. It is, isn't it? His smile didn't touch his eyes anymore. It hadn't in years. We need to talk tomorrow. 9 sharp, my lawyer will be there. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Your lawyer? Papers to sign. Sienna giggled, high and bright and oblivious. Babe, you promised we'd dance. He let her pull him away without another word, without looking back. Natalia stood there, champagne warming in her hand, and felt the foundations of her life begin to crack. That night, sleep was impossible. She sat in the bedroom they no longer shared, scrolling through photos on her phone. There she was at 26, holding Danny's hand outside his cramped office, both of them laughing about something she couldn't remember now. Their wedding day, his eyes full of what she'd thought was love. The first major property opening is saw him, his arm around her waist whispering, we did it, baby. We actually did it. Except we had become eyes somewhere along the way, and she'd been too busy building his empire to notice when she'd stopped existing in it. Morning arrived with cruel efficiency. Damien's office had floor-to-ceiling windows that made everyone who entered feel small. His lawyer, Bernard, silver-haired and shark-eyed, sat at the conference table with documents spread before him like a feast. And Sienna. She sat beside Damien, scrolling through her phone, already bored. Natalia, sit. She sat. Bernard slid papers across the glossy surface. The prenuptial agreement is clear. Upon dissolution of marriage, you receive no stake in Ashford Properties, no claim to intellectual property developed during the marriage, and a one-time settlement of $75,000. $75,000 for 8 years. For every negotiation, every connection, every crisis she'd solved, every vision she'd brought to life under his name. That's less than 1 property closing costs, Natalia said softly. The prenup is legally binding. Bernard's voice was smooth as silk, cold as winter. I'll sign. Damien leaned back, surprised. Just like that? Just like that. She signed every page. Her hand didn't shake. When she finished setting the pen down, Damien opened his wallet and pulled out a single dollar bill. He placed it on top of the contracts, crisp and deliberate. This is what you are actually worth, Natalia. The words came slowly, each one measured for maximum impact. You were arm candy. I built this empire. These properties, this vision, this brand, all me. You were just there, looking pretty at parties, playing supportive wife. Sienna laughed, actually laughed. Oh my God, babe. Savage. Something inside Natalia shattered, but her face remained perfectly still, a mask she'd learned to wear well. She reached across the table and picked up the dollar bill, held it up to the light, examining it like it was rare currency. "All I'm worth," she repeated. "All you're worth," he confirmed. Then he leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "You think I didn't notice? How the architects always asked for you, how investors wanted your input, but you were too weak to take credit, too mousy to demand recognition. That's why you'll never be anything more than what you are right now." He paused, making sure she heard every word. "Nothing. And Natalia, you'll die poor and forgotten." The words should have destroyed her. Once upon a time they would have. But as Natalia folded that dollar bill and slipped it into her purse, something else happened. Something Damien couldn't see because he'd stopped really looking at her years ago. Rage. Pure and crystalline and focused. Not the hot, messy kind that makes you scream. The cold kind. The kind that calculates. She stood slowly, gathering her purse with steady hands. "You're right, Damien. I was afraid. I let you take credit because I thought that's what love looked like. Sacrifice without recognition. I thought we were building something together. I was wrong." She walked toward the door, heels clicking against hardwood. At the threshold, she paused without turning around. "But here's what you forgot. Fools can learn, and queens who've been asleep can wake up." She pulled the door open and walked out, leaving Damien staring after her, confusion creasing his forehead. Sienna was already back on her phone, the moment already forgotten. But Natalia would never forget. The elevator descended, taking her away from the office that should have been partly hers, away from the life she'd built and watched him claim. She pulled out her phone. Her best friend Amara answered on the first ring. "How bad?" "Worse than we thought." Natalia's voice was steady despite the storm inside her. "I need a place to stay. And Amara, I need you to teach me everything you know about real estate acquisitions." "Real estate, Nat, what are you—" "He gave me $1, Natalia interrupted, her voice hardening. "Said that's all I'm worth. Said I'll die poor and forgotten. So I'm going to prove him wrong. I'm going to take his dollar and turn it into his worst nightmare." The elevator doors opened. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. "When can you start?" Amara asked. "Now." Amara's apartment was a third the size of the walk-in closet Natalia had just left, but it felt more like home. Property listings covered every surface. Market analyses were pinned to walls. This was the home of someone who actually worked for what they had. "You're serious about this?" Amara sat cross-legged on the couch, dark eyes studying her friend's face. "Deadly serious. Real estate is brutal, Nat. It's not like being the invisible partner in a hospitality company. You'll be competing against people who've been doing this for decades. You'll fail sometimes. You'll lose money. I know." Natalia pulled out that dollar bill, smoothing it on the coffee table between them. "But I also know how to see value where others see nothing. I know how to negotiate. I know how to transform potential into profit. I spent 8 years doing it for Damien. Now I'm doing it for myself." Amara picked up the dollar bill, examining it. $1? That's your starting capital? That's my fuel. You're insane. No, Natalia's smile was sharp enough to cut. I'm free. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what Natalia was proposing settling between them. Finally, Amara stood, walked to her desk, and pulled out a thick folder. Okay, if we're doing this, we're doing it right. These are properties currently in pre-foreclosure. Most people don't know how to find them. But I do. She spread listings across the table. Rundown buildings, distressed sales, properties other investors had passed on. We start small, Amara continued. We find something undervalued, something with good bones but bad presentation. You transform it, we sell it for profit, then we reinvest and do it again. Natalia stared at the listings, her mind already racing through possibilities, already seeing what these properties could become. How much do I need for the first one? 15,000. I can loan you 14. Your dollar makes 15. Let's do it. If you're watching this and you've ever had to rebuild your life from nothing, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now because what happens next is going to blow your mind. The bed and breakfast was a disaster. Peeling paint, sagging porch, overgrown garden, located in a neighborhood that was gentrifying but hadn't quite gotten there yet. Every other investor had passed on it. Too much work. Too much risk. Natalia saw a possibility. You're sure about this? Amara stood beside her, clipboard in hand, skepticism written across her face. I'm sure. They bought it for $15,000 at a county auction. The previous owner had abandoned it after a failed renovation. The bones were solid, 1920s craftsmanship, original hardwood floors beneath the grime, beautiful crown molding hidden under decades of bad decisions. Natalia moved in that day, slept on an air mattress, woke at dawn and worked until midnight. Scraped paint, sanded floors, replastered walls. Her hands, which had once only held champagne flutes at charity galas, became raw and calloused. She taught herself plumbing from YouTube videos, learned electrical work from a retired contractor who lived down the street, designed the interior herself, taking everything she learned from 8 years of luxury hospitality and distilling it into something authentic. 3 months later, the transformation was complete. The bed and breakfast looked like it belonged in a magazine. Vintage charm meets modern comfort. Every detail intentional. Every space optimized. She listed it for $60,000. It sold in 5 days. Natalia stood in Amar's apartment, staring at the bank transfer confirmation on her phone. $45,000 profit after paying Amara back and covering costs. "Oh my God," Amara whispered. "Nat, you did it. We did it." Natalia looked at her friend. 50-50 partners? Are you serious? I can't do this alone, and I trust you. So yes, 50-50. We build this together. Amara hugged her, tears streaming down both their faces. They reinvested everything. Bought 2 properties this time. Natalia worked even harder, pushing herself past exhaustion into something that felt like transformation. Every property she touched turned from neglected to desired. Every sale built capital for the next one. 6 months after Damien threw that dollar at her, Natalia had $200,000 in the bank. 1 year later, $800,000. She hired a small team, started targeting bigger properties. Her eye for potential became legendary in local real estate circles. She could walk through a building once and see exactly what it could become. 18 months after her divorce, Natalia attended a property launch for a boutique hotel in the Arts District. She'd been invited because people were starting to notice her work, starting to whisper her name. That's where she met Julian Cortez. He stood near the architectural models, studying them with an intensity that caught her attention. Tall, dark-eyed, maybe 40, he wore an expensive suit like it was an afterthought, someone comfortable in his own skin. "The spatial flow is interesting," he said without looking at her. "But the sustainability integration is what's really remarkable. Whoever designed this understands that luxury and responsibility aren't opposites." "Thank you," Natalia said. He turned surprised. "You designed this?" "I did." Julian Cortez, he extended his hand, architect, structural engineer, admirer of people who actually understand design philosophy. His handshake was warm, firm. His smile reached his eyes. "Natalia Voss. I know who you are." His accent placed him somewhere in South America, Argentina maybe. "You're the woman who's been buying distressed properties and turning them into small masterpieces. I've been following your work." Something in her chest fluttered. When was the last time someone had recognized her work? Acknowledged her by name? Following my work? I'm selective about who I collaborate with. I only work with people who have vision, integrity, and talent. You have all 3. He pulled out a business card. "Have dinner with me. Not as a date, though I wouldn't object if it became one. As colleagues, I'd like to hear about your design philosophy." Natalia took the card, her heart beating faster than it should. "I'm not looking for complications. Neither am I. But I am looking for extraordinary people, and you, Natalia Voss, are extraordinary." She should have said no. She was too busy, too focused, too recently broken. But something about the way he looked at her, not at her body, not at what she could do for him, but at her like she was worth knowing, made her nod. "Dinner, as colleagues." "As colleagues," he agreed, but his smile suggested he hoped for more. 3 days later, she found herself in Julian's loft, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. He cooked for her, which surprised her. Damien had never cooked, had considered it beneath him. Julian moved through his kitchen with easy confidence, chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, talking about architecture and philosophy, and the intersection of beauty and function. "You work too quick," he said, pouring wine. "I have things to prove." "To whom?" He handed her a glass. "Your ex-husband, the industry, or yourself?" The question landed harder than she expected. "All of the above." Julian set down his glass and crossed to where she stood. He didn't touch her, just looked at her with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Natalia, you've already proven everything. You've built something remarkable from nothing. You've shown everyone what you're capable of. At what point do you allow yourself to actually live? I don't know how, she whispered. Then let me show you. He kissed her then, slowly, deeply, like they had all the time in the world. Not demanding, offering. His hands cupped her face with a gentleness that made her throat tight. I'm scared, she breathed against his mouth. I know. But Natalia, I'm not him. I'm not going to take credit for your brilliance. I'm not going to make you small so I can feel big. I just want to exist beside you and watch you shine. Something in her chest cracked open. All the walls she'd built, all the armor she'd constructed to protect herself. That night, for the first time in 2 years, Natalia let herself want something that wasn't revenge. 3 years after Damien threw that dollar at her, Natalia stood in the penthouse office of Voss Properties. Her company, her vision, her name on everything. The view stretched across the entire city. 30 floors below, life continued. Up here, she was building an empire. Her portfolio had grown to 70 properties across 3 cities. Her company was valued at $90 million. And she'd done it without compromising her principles, without stepping on people, without becoming what Damien had been. You're doing it again. Julian's voice made her turn from the window. He stood in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand, smiling at her in that way that still made her heart skip. Doing what? Working instead of celebrating. He crossed the office, handed her coffee. The city council just approved your affordable housing project. That's huge, Natalia. You can take 5 minutes to feel proud. She accepted the coffee, let him pull her close. They'd been together for 18 months now, a relationship built on mutual respect, intellectual connection, and the kind of passion that grew deeper with time instead of fading. I am proud, she said against his chest, but there's still so much to do. There will always be more to do. Julian tilted her face up, made her look at him. You're allowed to be happy, you know. You're allowed to enjoy what you've built. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just finally listening. He kissed her, and Natalia felt herself relax into it. This was so different from what she'd had with Damien. Julian didn't need her to be small, didn't feel threatened by her success. He celebrated it, supported it, stood beside her as an equal partner. Their relationship had deepened slowly, carefully. Julian never pushed, never demanded. He showed up consistently, supported her vision, and loved her without trying to control her. And the physical connection between them had grown into something that still took her breath away. The way he touched her, with reverence and passion mixed together. The way he looked at her when they made love, really seeing her, all of her. The way he whispered her name in the dark like it was sacred. Come home with me tonight, Julian murmured against her lips. Let me cook for you. Let me take care of you for once. You always take care of me. Then let me do it more obviously. She laughed and it felt good, easy. When was the last time love had felt easy? That evening in Julian's loft, he did exactly what he promised. Cooked her favorite meal, poured expensive wine, put on music that made the whole apartment feel like they were the only 2 people in the world. After dinner, he pulled her onto the couch, held her close, traced patterns on her shoulder with his fingertips. I love you, he said quietly. Not a grand declaration, just truth. Offered simply. I love you too. I want you to move in with me. Natalia pulled back to look at him. Julian, I know you're scared. I know Damien made you think partnership meant losing yourself. But that's not what I'm offering. He took her hands. I'm offering you a home where you're celebrated, not tolerated. Space where you can be completely yourself. Mornings together and nights where you don't have to be strong for anyone else. I'm offering partnership, Natalia. Real partnership. Tears pricked her eyes. What if I mess it up? What if I'm so damaged from before that I can't do this right? Then we'll mess it up together and figure it out. Julian wiped her tears with his thumbs. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing each other even when things get hard. And I choose you, every day, exactly as you are. She kissed him then, deep and grateful and full of promise. That night they made love with an intensity that felt like claiming, both of them staking their place in each other's lives, in each other's futures. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Natalia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe, cherished, home. I'll move in, she whispered. Julian's arms tightened around her. Yeah. But even as she said it, even as happiness bloomed in her chest, a small part of her brain was still calculating, still planning, still building toward the moment when Damien would finally see what he'd lost. 4 years after her divorce, Natalia prepared to take Voss Properties public. The IPO would value her company at $500 million. $500 million from $1. The math was almost laughable. But 2 weeks before the scheduled IPO, her lead investor pulled out. Market volatility, they claimed. Too much risk. Without their backing, the IPO would fail. Without the IPO, her expansion plans would collapse. She needed $50 million in emergency capital. She had 48 hours to find it. Natalia sat in her office at midnight, staring at that framed dollar bill on her wall, feeling panic rise in her throat for the first time in years. Hey, Julian stood in the doorway. Of course he'd known where to find her. I can fix this, she said immediately. I just need to... Natalia. He crossed to her, took her hands. Let me help. This isn't your problem. We're partners. Your problems are my problems. He pulled out his phone. I have connections, investors who trust my judgment. Let me make some calls. Julian, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He kissed her forehead. This is what love looks like, remember? Carrying burdens together. She wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it, but something deeper, trust, made her nod. Julian spent the next 18 hours on the phone, called in every favor he had, leveraged every relationship. By evening, he'd secured commitments from 3 different investors. Natalia had her $50 million. The IPO went forward as scheduled. Voss Properties debuted at $512 million. Standing on the floor of the stock exchange, watching her company's symbol appear on the boards, Natalia felt something shift. This wasn't just about proving Damen wrong anymore. This was about proving herself right. That night, she and Julian celebrated in his loft. He opened champagne. She opened her heart. Thank you, she said, for believing in me, for supporting me, for being nothing like him. I'll always believe in you, Julian said, even when you don't believe in yourself. Marry me. The words were out before she could stop them. Julian's eyes widened. What? Marry me, Natalia repeated, more certain now. Not because I need you, because I choose you, because you've shown me what partnership actually means, because I want to build the rest of my life with someone who sees me as an equal. Julian set down his champagne, crossed to where she stood, cupped her face in his hands. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Then yes, absolutely yes. He kissed her, and Natalia felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. She wasn't Damien's ex-wife anymore. She wasn't even the woman who turned $1 into an empire. She was simply Natalia Voss. Brilliant, powerful, loved. If this story is giving you all the feels, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think happens next. Because trust me, the best part is still coming. 5 years after Damen Ashford threw $1 at his ex-wife and told her she'd die poor, he stood in the lobby of Voss Tower, trying to work up the courage to get in the elevator. His suit was off the rack. His shoes needed replacing. He'd lost weight, the unhealthy kind that comes from stress and skipped meals. Ashford Properties had collapsed spectacularly. Bad investments, worse management. Sienna had left him the moment the money dried up, moving on to a professional athlete with a bigger bank account and fewer problems. The banks had foreclosed on everything. The house, the cars, the properties he'd been so proud of. All gone. And now he was here, at the headquarters of his ex-wife's company, about to beg her for help. Security called up. There was a long pause. Then, Ms. Voss will see you, 30th floor. The elevator ride felt like descending into judgment. When the doors opened, he barely recognized the space. Modern, sleek, successful. Everything he'd once been. Natalia's assistant, a professional woman who looked at him like he was something that needed scraping off her shoe, gestured toward an office. Miss Voss is expecting you. He walked in, and there she was. Natalia stood by the window, backlit by the afternoon sun. She'd changed. Not just her clothes, though the suit she wore probably cost more than his monthly rent. She'd changed in some fundamental way. She stood taller, moved with confidence, looked at him with eyes that held no warmth, no anger, no anything. Damen, thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes. He'd rehearsed this speech 100 times. In the mirror, in the car, walking through the lobby, but now, standing before her, the words died in his throat. I'm broke, Natalia. Actually broke. I know. The company collapsed. Everything's gone. Sienna left. The house, the cars, the properties, all foreclosed. He took a shaky breath. I need help. A loan. $50 million. I can rebuild if I just have capital. I can... Why would I give you anything? The question was asked without emotion, just curiosity. Because I was wrong. The words felt like swallowing glass. About everything. The success, the vision, the properties, it was always you. I just took credit. And I've spent 5 years learning that lesson the hardest way possible. Natalia walked to her wall, took down a framed dollar bill. Damien recognized it immediately. Do you remember this? She asked. Every single day. You threw this at me. Told me it was all I was worth. Told me I'd die poor and forgotten. She held it up to the light. But I didn't die poor, Damien. I thrived. I built something extraordinary from literally nothing. She walked toward him, slowly, deliberately. When she was close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, she pressed that dollar bill into his hand. This is what you're worth now. $1, the same amount you valued me at. Natalia, please. And just like you told me, you'll die poor. Not because you lack talent, but because you lack the one thing that actually matters, the ability to see value in other people. She walked to her desk, pressed a button. Security, please escort Mr. Ashford out of the building. Natalia, wait. Don't come back here, Damien. You're not welcome in my space, my life, or my thoughts. You're nothing to me now. And that dollar, she gestured to the bill he clutched, that's more than you deserve. 2 security guards appeared. They weren't rough, but they were firm. They escorted Damien toward the elevator. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. Natalia had already dismissed him, was already on her phone, already moving on to things that actually mattered. The elevator doors closed on his face. Julian appeared in her doorway moments later. How do you feel? Free. Natalia looked at him and smiled, genuinely smiled. For the first time since I met him, I feel completely free. He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. He looked broken. He was already broken. I just stopped trying to fix him. Do you think he'll be okay? I think that's not my problem anymore. She pulled back to look at Julian. He has $1. Let him see what he can build with it. Maybe he'll learn something. Maybe he won't. Either way, it's not my responsibility. Julian kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. For not helping him? For knowing your worth. For refusing to let guilt manipulate you into saving someone who tried to destroy you. For choosing yourself. 6 months later, Natalia married Julian on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. No spectacle, no hundreds of guests. Just the people who mattered. Amara, her team from Voss Properties, Julian's family, and the handful of friends who'd supported them both. As she stood beside him, saying vows that promised true partnership and equality, Natalia thought about how far she'd traveled from that moment in Damien's office. The dollar bill still hung in her office, now with a plaque beneath it. The cost of underestimating a queen, everything. But it wasn't about Damien anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. It was about her, about resilience, about refusing to accept someone else's definition of her worth. That night, dancing with Julian under string lights, she felt complete. Not because she'd gotten revenge, though that had been satisfying, but because she'd built something beautiful from ruins. Because she'd learned to love again. Because she'd chosen herself. She'd taken an insult and built a crown from it. The dollar bill had been Damien's ending. But it was Natalia's extraordinary beginning. Before you go, if this story inspired you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me about a time you proved someone wrong. And subscribe to Mr. Cael Stories for more tales of triumph, love, and the kind of revenge that comes from becoming so successful, your enemies become irrelevant. When someone you loved looks you in the eye and tells you you're worthless, when they erase every contribution you made, every sacrifice, every late night you poured into building their dream, something inside you either breaks forever or it transforms into something they'll never see coming. What would you do if the person who destroyed you came crawling back, desperate for the very thing they swore you'd never have? Would you help them? Would you laugh in their face? Or would you show them exactly what happens when you underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose? Remember, your worth isn't determined by people who can't see your value. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Until next time, this is Mr. Cael, reminding you that queens don't need crowns to rule. They just need to know their worth.